This is Including You, the new series from Lead at Any Level. Including You features stories from chief diversity officers and other executives who are creating inclusive cultures in their organizations. Our goal is to show what's working in companies just like yours, to give you the tools you need to keep pushing for progress in your own workplace. We want to create belonging and opportunity for everyone, including you. And now here's your host, Amy C. Waninger.
Welcome back to Including You. I'm your host, Amy C. Waninger, the Inclusion Catalyst. My guest today is Sybil Stewart. She's a speaker, educator, and advocate at TheSageStewart. She helps women of faith amplify their voices to start businesses with passion and purpose and to do it in style. Sybil is based in Durham, North Carolina. Sybil, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And every time somebody reads that, I'm like, yes, that's my I am.
Love it. I love that you have such a clearly stated audience and purpose and position in this world and in this work, because what you do is so needed. Can we talk just a little bit about the entrepreneurial landscape for Black women and how hard it is to get the support, the runway, the buy-in, the confidence, because everything in entrepreneurship is geared toward white men.
Yes, I'm going to try to do this really quickly. We are naturally the experts. Women of color, we already know the research shows we go to school longer, we specialize quickly, and we figure out how to be an expert. But so often we don't understand that that expertise comes at a cost of learning the skills that it takes to run a successful business. And the corporate world doesn't give us space to do that. And I think it's extremely intentional that these corporations leave us unarmed to understand the business savvy and to understand what it takes to build a connection with other people so that they will want to champion behind you and support you. One of the very first coaches that I interacted with when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, they told me, oh, you've got a visibility problem. Why don't you lean into your network? And I said, because I never had one. My network does not look like where I want to go. My network does not include entrepreneurs. My network does not include people who have already hit the $1 million plus mark. So it doesn't serve me well to talk to the people who I enjoy talking to because they don't understand the experience that I'm trying to have and they don't understand what I am trying to build. The second challenge that I found, which is why I'm so passionate about helping steward women from 0 to 3 years, is because a lot of big coaches, a lot of programs don't want to touch anybody who is either still in that transition or who hasn't hit $250,000 or $500,000. Most coaches don't want to partner with them. And I'm like, that's why the business is failing. We don't have resources to help us exit corporate. And now you're denying resources even when we can pay for them at a time where we do need extra support from somebody who is knowledgeable. And that was one other hurdle that I experienced when I first started my business. I was like, here, I have money. And no one wanted to help me. No one wanted to coach me. And that's why I'm so intentional about being an advocate for women who need those exit strategies as well as those startup skills. And it's through my own live experience that I bring this, because I was a builder in every corporation I worked for. I worked at all startups. I don't know what happened there, but so I know what the startup mentality is and what it takes. But so often we are left unarmed about all of the things. And then they have these cute cliches. It's like that no one can trust. I'm like, I know them, but I don't like them and I don't trust them. Now what do I do? And the business books don't talk about that. They don't talk about ground zero at age 40. That's what I talk about.
I love this so much because we are seeing, especially coming out of the pandemic, we saw such shifts and such disparities in workforce retention numbers between men and women generally, but then big disparities between white women and women of color, especially. And all of this is wrapped up in things like availability of childcare and availability of healthcare and all these systems that work against Black women and Hispanic women especially, and Indigenous women, to basically keep them home or close to home, unpaid, unsatisfied, unfulfilled. And what you're saying is absolutely true. There are people who can trip and fall into $1 million funding rounds without even trying. And if you're over here trying to bootstrap even a small business and you're saying, look, I need $25,000 to make it from May to March, or from January to March. I need $25,000 just to get to there, and then I'm going to be okay. The loans are not available. The funding is not available. There's nobody handing out checks. And then to your point, the resources, just the knowledge of people who have done this before are harder to find, because most successful women, have become successful either through academia, because there's a clear path there until they get frustrated and leave, or through corporate ladders where they get so far, hit a glass ceiling,
and then they leave.
And then they leave. And so then it's, where do I even go? How do people do this? So I think it's phenomenally important that you're out there doing this for women who really need, first of all, they need confidence, because they've probably been in an abusive space for the last 20 years, telling them they can't do anything right. And now all of a sudden you're telling them, you're an expert, just go do it. Just go charge bank for what, and they're like, but I've been told for 20 years I don't know anything.
Yeah. I said, turn around and make them your clients. That's what you go do. And I've seen a lot of women do that. And I've worked with a couple of women who have turned their former employers into their clients, because at the moment where I help them negotiate their severance agreements, because yes, I will do that too. Up until that moment, the employer thinks that it's not real. And the minute a woman makes that real for them, what can I do to retain you? You can compensate me at this level because I'm leaving, but I promise to give you this. And it's happening. So we just have to figure out how to own our space, get clear about what we intend to do and how we intend to serve, and really embrace being the CEO of our lives and every other part of this journey that we are on. That is what we are called to do. But to your earlier point, and I actually wrote a post about this on LinkedIn earlier, I said it took me 18 months to find my brand voice because I had been giving it away for 18 years. I said, now think about that. And the research talks about the workplace trauma that women of color go through, and they equate it to PTSD. And it can take anywhere from 2 years to 10 years, depending on how aggressive that workplace experience was. But moreover, the support system that you may or may not have outside of the workplace, which just compiles the entire experience. And so often we think, oh, this person just had a bad day at work. No, they didn't just have a bad day at work. They've been having several years of bad days of work that now lead to depression, anxiety, burnout, and unfortunately death. I said, they are killing us quietly and pretending that it was an accident or that it is somehow okay. And to know that the work that I do is actually healing lives. One of my clients called me a healer. One of them, Sybil, you saved my marriage. Whoa, you're welcome. But how did I do that? Oh, you helped me realize that the lack of boundaries at work was bleeding into my relationship at home. Now I understand why I can't do the things. Or someone telling me that they thought that they had infertility issues, and I helped them leave their job and start their business. And then 3 months later, hey, Sim, it's a boy, it's a girl. And I'm like, I said, it's killing us. So while I am all about doing all of this work, of course, yes, start your business. When I hear a woman tell me that they no longer have stress-induced diabetes, they no longer are showing signs of stroke, they found out that they really can have that baby that they've been wanting for 10 years, how can I not call myself an advocate? How can I not say that this is the work I'm doing? And so I get really protective of the woman that I get to serve because I know she was me.
And it's not just serving the woman, it's serving the community around the woman.
Absolutely.
Because, and Black women of color, but Black women in particular, are usually carrying multiple generations along with them.
Yes.
And so it's not just that woman, it's that woman and her spouse and her children and her parents and her siblings and her grandparents and nieces and nephews and others who see her as an example. So this
Yes.
isn't just life-changing, this is community building.
I couldn't have said it better. I tell people I'm in the business of protecting communities and legacies, but we got to be alive to build that legacy. We have to be in tune and in alignment with who we are so that we can caregive to our elders, so that we can pour into our children, so that we can be the first generation that creates the opportunity to have generational wealth. But we have to be well to do that. And so many of us, we're walking through these corporate corridors. I call it the wilderness in the workplace. Like when we think about history, what would people do when they shunned them? They would kick them out the community because they knew they couldn't survive alone. And so every time I hear a woman tell me she's the first or the few or the only, I'm like, you're in the wilderness, sis. You got to get out. You got to find a community. You got to figure out how to reconnect to a new tribe because you are officially in the wilderness and you don't know it.
I want employers to hear this. I'm so glad we're having this conversation on this show because I want employers to understand that the women of color, the Black women working for them do have a choice. And they have a choice. The employers have a choice. You can continue to treat people in abusive, inequitable ways, and you can continue to see them walk right out the door. And to your conversation about severance and making your employer your consultant, these women are not charging their employers their old salary.
Oh, no.
We're talking 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, 10 times what they were making before.
Yes.
And if the work is worth that kind of money, why not just pay people what they're worth? Why not just treat them the way they deserve to be treated? Why make this so much more difficult for them, for you, for your customers, for the people you serve? Just treat people right.
Yes.
But if they don't, they know they can come to Sybil.
Absolutely. Look, what do you need? Do you need some stewarding out? Do you need a friendly reminder of who you are and whose you are? Do you need to, one of my clients said, thank you for letting me borrow your voice while I found mine. That was probably the most, I don't even know what to say, that in those moments of vulnerability, when she didn't think she could trust anybody, that she trusted me enough to speak on behalf of her because she couldn't find her footing yet. She couldn't find her voice yet. I do that every day of the week.
It matters so much. It's so important. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm curious if people are, if there's a woman out there right now, a woman of faith, woman of color, who is in this spot where she feels like, look, every day I sit in my car and cry before I go into work. Every day when I leave, I wonder, am I going crazy? Did what just happened really happen? Why doesn't anybody understand me? Why don't they listen? How can she reach you for some help?
Please tell her to email me directly at stewart@createmytruth.com. I think we're all responsible for creating the truth that we want. One of the things that I found throughout this journey of entrepreneurship is it's not enough for me to support them. And so I do introduce every single one of my women to I've got so many resources, attorneys that I personally vet to make sure that they understand the place this woman might be in. Financial advisors for these women who can't figure out how to unwind some of the financial things that might have happened during their corporate journey, only to realize, oh my gosh, one lady didn't realize she was getting wrong compensation and they messed up her severance. And I'm like, mental health practitioners that work specifically with women of color. I have all of that in my arsenal because that was everything I wish I had when I was the person sitting in the parking lot crying, when I was pulling up to my therapist who did not understand. And this is not a knock against therapists. This is a knock against therapists who don't understand the Black woman's experience in corporate. And sometimes it is okay. And I know this is not about medical gaslighting, but my advocacy will reach across talking to your physician if we have to, because we're also being medically gaslit when we try to tell our physicians that we know something is wrong and we are trusting our intuition, and they're saying, oh, you're overreacting. So now I'm getting it from my employer, and then the person who's supposed to be my advocate is not showing up as well for me. I will help you with that too. I'm all about writing a sternly worded letter to the top of the medical, because I did that for myself. When I realized my physician was gaslighting me while I was going through this, and they told me I was overreacting. And I wrote the head of the practice and I said, if this is how you treat your women of color patients, you let me know and I'll take my business elsewhere. At which point her calendar all of a sudden got open, and now I see her. I don't see anybody else in the practice but her. But why did I know to do that? It's because somebody poured into me in the way I pour into these women. So please know, and people say, why don't you call yourself a coach? I said, how many coaches are calling your doctor for you? How many coaches have 10 lawyers across the states ready to hear you because they trust that who I'm sending needs their help? How many coaches have mental health practitioners at the ready for when you need them most? The work is, they said the workers are few, but there's a lot to be done. That's how they can find me. My website is www.TheSageStewart.com. And I will talk to you for 20 minutes or 2 hours if you need me to, because we really need to be heard. And this is a place and space where we don't often have a lot of trust.
There were so many systems that you mentioned that are just set up to be frustrating and to be exclusive and to be discriminatory and to be problematic. It's everything from dealing with the payroll department to the healthcare system, to the mental health system, to the legal system. There's just so much that can be stacked against a person individually, but then when you're talking about you and most of the people are in the same boat, it can be really a struggle to navigate some of this stuff. Sybil, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, for this purpose-driven, passion-driven work that you're doing, and in style, by the way. I am sure that the world is a better place because you are in it, and I am so grateful to know that you are out there helping women heal and become whole, and helping them holistically from some of the workplace trauma that they've experienced.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And people say, why are you on fire for this work? I said, because again, she could be me and I was her. And so much of the work that I do in corporations is reminding them of why I left and reminding them of who else is going to leave if they don't start figuring it out.
Absolutely. This is, I always, one question I always ask my corporate clients is, do you have all your problems solved yet?
Correct.
And they look at me like I'm crazy. Of course we don't. I'm like, then why on earth would you leave anybody on the sidelines? Why would you have anybody who's afraid to speak up and solve a problem? Why would you have anybody that can't come in and do their best work every day? Because I've been here 15 minutes and I've seen a ton of problems. And I know there are folks here that could help you solve them, but they're afraid to speak up. And not only do you need folks to speak up, you need folks from a lot of different perspectives, because you are not going to hear the same thing from everybody. And most people won't speak except with their feet when they leave.
And when you do try to speak, which again, moment of transparency here, when you do try to speak, the very next day you're a poor performer, you're not a team player, you're disjointed from mission, you're not a culture fit. Oh my gosh, so many other words that they will throw at you simply because you've decided that you've taken enough from the thing that ails you. You've suffered enough pain. Hey, I'm raising my hand and saying this is not okay. Of course it's okay. Otherwise, something's wrong with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
if setting boundaries at work means you're difficult to work with, which is what they always come back and tell you.
Oh, you're angry.
Oh, you're difficult to work with. You're angry. Yeah. No. Other people get to have boundaries. Other people
it's fair. When you understand that you're a mediocre human, yes, I said it. When you understand you're a mediocre human and you are in the presence of excellence, you're afraid that person's going to take your job, take your position, and take your income. But you know what? Here's the interesting part. And I hope this is for all the people in the back of the room. We don't want your job. We don't want your job. We just want to come in and do our job to the best of our ability. Now, if that infringes on your laziness, that's not my problem. I never wanted anything other than the job that I was hired to do because I knew what everybody else was facing. I was like, ooh, that is not a problem I want to solve. But see, when you're thinking with fear and absent of logic, all is, oh, this person's coming after me. When in fact, I was walking in the opposite direction. I didn't even see you there, right? When you're unqualified, you make sure everybody else suffers because of your lack of knowledge. And that's really what it comes down to.
A players work for A players.
That's it.
And yep, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Oh my gosh. So that was a whole sermon right there. I'm going to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for sharing so much of your own experience and your expertise with our viewers and listeners and friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode, follow Lead at Any Level on LinkedIn and YouTube. Then join us for Including You video simulcast every Thursday at noon Eastern. Including You can also be enjoyed each week as part of the Living Corporate audio podcast series, available on all major podcast platforms. Learn more at living-corporate.com. Including You is brought to you in part by Lead at Any Level, a boutique training and consulting firm improving employee engagement and retention for companies that promote from within. Lead at Any Level. Leaders can be anywhere and should be everywhere. Learn more at leadatanylevel.com. Lead at Any Level and its logo are registered trademarks of Lead at Any Level LLC. The views and opinions of guests on our show do not necessarily reflect the positions of Lead at Any Level, Living Corporate, or the sponsors of Including You.
That's it for this week's episode of Including You. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you found us. And don't forget to leave us a comment or a review so you can help others find us as well. Please be sure to join me next week when my guest will be Bryant Alexander of Reframe Coaching and Consulting.